Good morning again. Welcome to session 8 of the Dorje Droddles Director's Talks, Trap of Doubt with Derek Collini, where we have been listening to Gagaku as per the Vidyadhara's suggestion, and Derek's as well. We are coming to you from the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq, also known as Nova Scotia, Canada, where it is customary to begin any conversation with a comment on the weather. However, as it is still winter, my least favorite season, I'm going to let it go until April. A little housekeeping. We have several new people since we met last. Most of you know this by heart, but please stay muted unless you're speaking, and refrain from using the chat to everyone during the presentation. It's a little bit distracting. This meeting is being recorded, so if you don't want to be seen, you know what to do. For technical difficulties, contact Bob Vogler. Today's gathering is a full 2 hours. Our second hour will include breakout discussion groups and question and answer in the whole group. The breakouts are randomly assigned, giving you the opportunity to meet new folks and hear many points of view throughout this course. You might begin the discussion groups by introducing yourself by your name and location. Please welcome all our newcomers, although you might not know who they are, since you're going to be meeting with different people again. I will endeavor to post the commentators' questions that you've all seen a few times in the chat just before the breakout. They are meant to guide our discussion, but it's fine if the conversation goes in other directions. Please listen deeply and speak respectfully. Heartily encourage each other to speak. And we will return to the main room for question and answer after 25 minutes. You can ask questions by raising your hand virtually or writing your question in the chat. The commentator will call on you directly, or Shari will read questions from the chat. The Zoom room will stay open for 15 minutes after we close for catching up with old and new friends. Recordings of each gathering will be made available by email and also posted to Canvas. And now Lennart will lead us in the invocation for raising wind horse.
The assembly of the three jewels, the three roots, gods and sages, the three protector, Maya Devi, Jaya Devi, Parmatratrin, and the Vidyadharas of India and Tibet, the glorious protector, Ganapati with the divine armies of Jwalas, the five patron gods, the great being Gesar, and so on, all those gods of the cosmic lineage who command coincidence, to all those I offer clouds of real imagined good offerings. I supplicate you with kindness, please grant your blessings. Curses, spells, spiritual sorcery, don't obstructing spirits, limits, obstacles, and so on. May all these signs of the weakening and corruption of Windhorse be pacified. Strife, enmity, scandal, warfare, lawsuits, recurrent calamity, and so on. Pacify all such obstructing discord. Multiply the power and strength of the virtuous Windhorse, the four-legged miracle. Please accomplish the spiritual and temporal, supreme and ordinary cities, and without exception, whatever mind desires. Om Vagisvaram, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Vajrapani Hum, Om Haksama Om Ahum Vajra Guru Padma Siddhi Hum, Ha Ha He He Ho Ho Sare Vijaya Siddhi Ho, Tak Seng Kyung Rok Dia Ke, gather all Savar, gather ho, rouse all our life virtue in glorious Windhorse, higher and higher. Om ye dhamma hetu pabhava hetum tesham tathagatu hayavada tesham charu niroda evam varimaha samana swaha.
Welcome, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce Derek Collini, who is joining us from his home just outside of New York City. So way back when, Derek's undergraduate studies in comparative world religion and Tibetan and Sanskrit languages took him to Harvard. And I think we can say that his graduate studies were with Chogyam Trungpa and other of our great masters. I think Derek understood early on that the different Tibetan schools each contribute valuable teachings. So the Rimé movement of Tibetan Buddhism, which the Vidyadhara ascribed to, brings these teachings together and makes them available, free of sectarian rivalry. Derek has served the Kagyu, Nyingma, and Vajradhatu Shambhala traditions for many years. He coordinated visits for lineage teachers to the West, such as the 16th Karmapa and the 15th Dalai Lama, and translated with the Nalanda Translation Committee. Some of his other accomplishments include the Tibetan Buddhist Resource Center, the New York Shambhala Meditation Center Practice and Study, the New York City Rimé Shedra, and the Westchester Meditation Center. So Derek worked closely with the Vidyadhara to coordinate these successful visits from major Tibetan teachers. This kind of work requires devotion, attention to detail, and diplomatic equanimity. I think, in my experience, Derek has those qualities. And I think it's amazing that you have also maintained your great sense of humor through all of your various endeavors. And so it's just a delight to welcome you today. Please, Derek.
Good morning. Thank you for that. Let's begin with a bow. Good morning, and welcome to the part 2 of this wonderful series of going through the first presentation of the Shambhala teachings in an extensive, coordinated fashion by the Dorje Drodel. which occurred back in 1978, 44 years ago, a long time ago. How's my sound? Is everything okay? Team, guys? Thank you. So this segment, we go through the dignities, and just a few general remarks about that I think would be appropriate, is that as we go through each dignity, the dignities of the warrior, that in some way are a progression through the stages of development of warriorship, and in some ways remain as adornments or as different aspects of the qualities of all of us as warriors. The general progression is going further and further beyond the limitations of habitual patterns, hope and fear, and being able to dwell in space without reference point. So for each of the dignities, the way to understand them is to focus first on what is the obstacle to the dignity. And how do we overcome the obstacle? And then what are the qualities? And these are all presented in these wonderful images and analogies by the Dorje Drodel. And they're presented in the form of lists, lots of lists. Early on, many of us were introduced to the Shambhala teachings through the Shambhala book, Shambhala Sacred Path of the Warrior. I don't think there's any list in that book. And those of us who had studied the Buddha Dharma tradition beforehand had many lists. And suddenly lists appeared big time in the Shambhala teachings. And the Dorje Drodel felt it was very important to study in this way, of going through lists of qualities, categories, ways of breaking down our experience and our understanding into different aspects, different stages, different categories. And so he urged us, and it's very important to try to understand the logic of the lists. Some of them are progressive, some of them are different aspects of the same thing. So it's very helpful to remember the lists and understand the different aspects, and to memorize them as much as we can. The other thing is that I found very interesting is that the Dorje Drodel went through, I think, 7 talks, basically presenting meek, the dignity of meek, the first 7 talks, from basic goodness through sacredness, are all an introduction to the first stage of the path of the warrior, the development of the dignity of meek. Experiencing and understanding our own basic goodness, coming in contact with our vulnerability, our gentleness, and our intelligence, and our potential, discovering some sense of confidence that's not dependent on accoutrements. Gradually seeing the Great Eastern Sun, catching a glimpse of the Great Eastern Sun. And at the same time, beginning to then look at our pre-existing situation in a different way, seeing our habitual patterns, understanding the cocoon that we have lived in for a very long time. the comfort, the familiarity, the hominess of our ego. The main obstacle to meek being the ego, the desire to stay within our comfortable, non-threatening world as much as we can achieve that, where we're not exposed and not put on the spot, and not our habitual patterns and our fixation on ourself is not challenged. We spend our lives trying to create that. So I found it interesting that he spent so many talks describing that, and then we'll be going through the remaining dignities, almost one talk per dignity. And it feels to me like he did that because there's a major shift from having experienced the first dignity genuinely, gives us a profound launching pad, a profound foundation for understanding the remaining dignities. So there's a major transition point that occurs between meek and then perky, and between meek and the other dignities. And it seems like that transition is experiencing, understanding, and working through what the title of this talk is, The Trap of Doubt. And doubt has occurred earlier in the past. Doubt about our ability to wake up, about our wakefulness, about our basic goodness. We've had that doubt about ourselves from the moment we were born, doubting our fundamental self-worth, our fundamental potential, which is why we progress in this trajectory of hope and fear for many, many years, many, many lifetimes. Having accomplished the dignity of meek, the experience of doubt has a very different quality to it. It's a matter of having gotten into these teachings and having experienced the benefit of sitting practice, sitting meditation, having experienced the benefit of understanding the framework of basic goodness, gentleness, intelligence, and the Great Eastern Sun. Having understood the importance of meekness, the humbleness, the bravery, the exertion. And at some point in that process, we all experience a stage where the trajectory of the practice and the path and the disciplines reveal a geometrically larger project, geometrically larger task of undermining our ego. In some sense, the beginning stages of the path stabilize our ego. And it's unavoidable. Spiritual materialism, we use the practice, the disciplines, and the path to actually stabilize ourselves. We get comfortable with ourselves, accept ourselves, we start to feel good about ourselves and our ability to overcome minor obstacles and to transform our lives. The ability to practice sitting meditation, to be present, to be mindful and aware. And then we find that there's something beyond that probably we didn't know we were getting into when we started. We didn't know quite what we were getting or where it would lead to. It's a completely radical, transcendent path of overcoming fixation on oneself. And so when we begin to experience that, our ego produces a massive fart, a massive hiccup. And we have all sorts of reasons and excuses and rationalizations for why we are having a problem, why we can't sit as much as we want, why we can't be brave and gentle. We're very creative in coming up with excuses of all kinds, blaming it on the weather maybe, or the teacher, different aspects of the teachings. The colors aren't right. The way the person speaks isn't right, or they said something you didn't like. The candles aren't in the right place. It's not the right incense. And all of these are the trap of doubt. Our excuses, because we've seen space, we've seen the expanse of space beyond the ego. We have an intimation of that and we pull back. Our ego has this natural reflex of pulling back. And the reason why it's so slippery, so devious, this stage of doubt, is that we have all sorts of logics for it. We've come to appreciate the working of our intellect, our mind, and our understanding. We have a greater ability at understanding our world and ourselves. And so we believe our doubt. And that is why it's called the trap of doubt. There's many obstacles that occur on the path, and none of them are as devious as this, which is why it's called the trap of doubt. Because we are told early on, we're encouraged to be skeptical and critical. So we revert back to that. So it's important to understand that this doubt really has no substance to it and is purely the ego pulling back. And all of the various excuses have absolutely no relevance. And if you don't understand that, then you're caught in the trap of doubt. In other words, as one of my fellow warriors here explained to me very helpfully beforehand, the key is to doubt the doubt. Is to recognize doubt. Just like with any obstacle that occurs, we recognize it. We acknowledge what we're experiencing. And then we work with it. Other obstacles we work with in different ways. With doubt, we don't believe the doubt. We recognize it for what it is. And we immediately cut through it. We pierce through it. The sharpness of Perky. And what makes it more difficult is that doing this once doesn't eliminate the doubt. It requires discipline to continually cut through that doubt over and over again. And to be willing to expose our habitual patterns and our knee-jerk reaction to protect ourselves, and the way that we use everything and anything as an excuse to not go forward, to not go further into space and letting go. and being brave and brilliant and going beyond self-concern, dealing with our world. So the reaction to doubt manifests in these different ways. The Dorje Drado goes through the different aspects of the obstacles. He in this talk, and he goes through this topic of doubt a number of times. I found two other sources. Actually, was directed there by Friendly Helping Warriors, which are always appreciated. In the Kalapa Assembly talks, where he goes through this topic of doubt and how to work with this doubt, how the doubt manifests, what are the aspects of it, and how to work with it. And in this one, he talks about the main aspect or the main obstacle or characteristic of this doubt is laziness. In another talk, he provides laziness as one of 4 aspects of doubt. And in this talk and one other, he provides laziness as the main aspect, the main quality or cause for doubt. This doubt, this trap of doubt. And when you compare them and look at them, they pretty much cover the same thing. Laziness. He says, this basic doubt occurs because there is a sense of laziness. You forget to raise lungta. You think you don't need to. Oh, been there, done that. And we're too lazy to do it again, to continually do it. It's amazing how simple that comes down to. That point is that it comes down to just forgetting, obviously intentionally, to raise lungta. To believe, you forget to believe in your basic goodness, and you forget that you are stepping towards the cocoon. We've learned this in our sitting practice. We see our mind continually revolves back into the cocoon. But at some point we gain some stability in our practice, and we forget that there's more than just discursive thoughts. There's the primal force of our ego that continually reverts back into its strategy of the cocoon. Therefore, laziness begins to develop. This kind of laziness is not so much just wanting to work and wanting to sleep a lot. It's interesting that he says a laziness is not so much just wanting to work. I think he's referring to the type of laziness that is called busyness, where we busy ourselves with all sorts of unnecessary or sort of very incidental activities to keep us from relating with space. But it is a laziness in the sense of avoidance. You want to avoid further warrior gestures and a further sense of gallantry. You can't be bothered. The thought occurs to you that jumping into the warrior's path is very demanding. Therefore, you might develop nostalgia for setting sun vision and try to go back and relax in that way. And I think many of us, if not most, or all of us, have friends who have started to meditate in the newer trend of the mindfulness world. And among those friends or colleagues on the path of meditation, we see our friends also experience this process of going through the beginning stages of meditation and then finding out that this path of meditation is light years beyond what they had bargained for initially. Initially, they were looking for some stability in their mind and their emotions and some way to relax and come into the present. And at some point, they realized that it's all about overcoming ego and stepping out into the greater world of the Great Eastern Sun. And they freak out. They have different ways of freaking out, but basically, it's a very common experience. It's also a very intelligent experience because they're seeing, the ego is seeing that this is leading to overcoming or destroying the ego. And so it has, like all obstacles do, has this edge of intelligence in it. He presents this laziness as having these 6 categories. And so you might look through this list and see it like, does this list correspond to other ways of characterizing different qualities that we know from the Shambhala tradition or from the Buddhist tradition? Does it incorporate, bless you, does it incorporate the 3 roots of the setting sun world: passion, aggression or attachment, aggression, and ignorance or stupidity? Does it correlate with the 5 aspects of neurotic mind as presented in the 5 Buddha families? Stupidity or ignorance, aggression, pride, attachment, jealousy. It looks like that one is possibly a good comparison as a way of further understanding these lists, and a way of not just leaving them as sort of rote, lifeless categories, but really trying to understand how they relate to us, what their core aspect is. And so perhaps the first 5 are the 5 Buddha families, and the 6th is all of them together. I feel like the key to working with doubt is provided in the way that the warrior of Perky is described, and I know that we'll go through that in detail in the next class, but just wanted to peek at that for a second, briefly. The warrior who is Perky, so I'm reading from the letter of the Black Ashe, is not caught in the trap of doubt. Just like a snow lion in its prime, refreshing oneself in highland mountains, following the scents in the fragrant air. The warrior has discipline. So this key aspect of working with the trap of doubt is as understanding that it's a trap, in what way is it a trap, and then having discipline and relating to that approach towards this obstacle. In addition, refreshing oneself in highland mountains, refers to going beyond the conceptual content of the doubt. We don't get into the lowlands and all the weeds, all the details of what the doubt is about, because we know that all of it is just the squirming about of our ego trying to survive and reassert itself. Following the scents in the fragrant air. So relating to our sense perceptions, our smell, which among our sense perceptions is one of the senses that's most distant from conceptual mind. So going beyond conceptual mind, because conceptual mind is where doubt has its breeding ground. So I think I've said a lot. I don't think I need to go through the categories in detail. I thought just briefly, I thought maybe the obstacles or the characteristics of laziness as presented. The first one, anxiety, maybe is the Buddha family ignorance, basic ignorance of self, fixation on self. And then jealousy is the karma family, poverty mentality. Forgetfulness is the opposite of intelligence of the Vajra family. It has a sort of an edge to it that almost is or is aggressively sort of forgetting, intentionally not remembering. Bloatedness, pride of the Ratna family. And then the Padma family, slanderous activity. The worst, the Dorje Trottle describes this category as fatal, the worst one, because it's not just internalized, it actually spreads doubt and discord to our fellow warriors. So this obstacle of doubt occurs on an individual level and a community level, a societal level, a clan level, among friends, among fellow warriors, in communities. And we can see this happening in the different communities that we exist in. Maybe our pinochle group, or our mahjong group, or our family, or our town. I don't know what other groups there might be. I can't possibly think of what other groups there might be. And then bringing them all together in a way is the last one, is body and mind are not synchronized, which, as we know, is of the synchronization of body and mind is the mark of basic goodness of Great Eastern Sun, of a genuine warrior, is that body and mind are synchronized. That sums it all up. So at this point, I'd like to shift to the next part of our session, which is to play the recording of the Dorje Trottle, please. I've selected a couple of sections, and it's always extremely helpful to hear the Dorje Trottle, his own voice and his presence, equally as powerfully as his words, his presence. So if Mr. Vogler would be so kind as to play the recordings, that would be great.
And tonight, or this afternoon's issue, is being the notion of Perky, is what we're going to discuss. And again, as you have received the text on the letter of the Black Rache, at the point which says describes the warrior of Perky, it says that the warrior of Perky is not caught in the trap of doubt. And we're going to discuss that this afternoon. Obviously, without the Great Eastern Sun vision of any kind, it would be impossible for us to actually get any vision of the warriors at all. You know that. The warriors' vision of the Great Eastern Sun has already occurred when a person becomes a man of Shambhala, a woman of Shambhala. At an earlier level, when they have already experienced the notion of meek. In the notion of meek, we have already discussed how to take attitude to oneself. Basic goodness and the notion of wholesomeness. And also we discussed the notion of working with others. And then incidental issue, or maybe fundamental issue, the concept of a cocoon. And we have already discussed the power of the GES, the Great Eastern Sun. And now we go a further step here. We are studying and trying to find out the notion of a doubt. Why the doubt is regarded as a trap at the level of perkiness. You have already experienced some sense of wholesomeness and some sense of gentleness and confidence already with meekness, which is like plowing a field has taken place already, which is quite hard work already. And then the farmer might have a doubt to himself, saying, "Good heavens and earth, what am I doing plowing this field, working so hard? Since we have worked already hard on ourselves in our discipline, of developing discipline, and then there will be a doubt occurred, and halfway through. If we could correlate that with a Buddhist practice of sitting meditation, at the beginning, person feels good and enthusiastic. In the middle of it, while you are on your zafu already, then you begin to question yourself, what am I doing here? Making myself a fool, and so forth. That's the kind of doubt which comes halfway through. It's not the original doubt which either you should get in or out of it, but once you got in already, then there will be an intermediary level that there will be some doubt is occurred. And the doubt is occurred because you begin to step into the second level of warriorship, which is the perky. And the synonym for that is also very sharp. The sharpness of the person. Perky and sharpness is synonyms in this case. The basic doubt occurred because there's a sense of laziness. That is to say, a person forgets raised their longta, and the person forgets believing in the inherent goodness, and the person also forget that they are stepping towards cocoon. Therefore, laziness begin to develop. This kind of laziness we are discussing here, it's not so much if you just you don't want to work, you want to sleep a lot, but laziness in the sense of avoidance, that you want to avoid further the warrior gesture and a further sense of gallantryness of it, that you want to avoid that. You couldn't be bothered. And sometimes thought Kurt, a student, that the realization of jumping into warrior's path is very demanding. Therefore, you might develop some kind of nostalgia to go back to setting sun vision of all kinds and try to relax that way.
You are muted, Derek.
Thank you, sir. So that was the first segment. We have one more very short section where the Dorje Drodel describes the positive. He says we review these categories from the positive point of view, and he provides the opposite or antidote to each of the categories of laziness, which is extremely informative and very helpful to look at both aspects as we experience doubt and experience different obstacles, whatever they are, on our path. So please, the second excerpt.
We might go over again on that particular list positively. Without anxiety, develops a sense of perkiness in basic perkiness, because no anxiety involved. Without jealousness, one feels basic health and togetherness. And without forgetfulness, one begins to develop some sense of precision and brilliance. And without self-bloatedness, one begins to develop very perky and meek, because you are available to the rest of your fellow warriors. And none without the notion of slandering, that a person begins to speak a good word. So there is some sense of further genuine goodness of one's behavior, one's demeanor. And when the body and the mind are completely synchronizes, that you become completely free from the trap of doubt altogether, which is the first theme of the warrior's perkiness.
Your power source is plugged in.
Oh, thank you, sir. Buzzing. There's the buzzing. So thank you for playing those two excerpts. And now I believe we shift into the breakout groups. And Deborah is showing the proposed questions for contemplation and discussion in the chat. And hopefully those will continue to appear in the chat function as you get into the breakout rooms. So I look forward to seeing you back here in some 25 minutes or so. Thank you, Sherry. I see a hand raised gentleman, TJ and JT, XY.
Greetings. Do you recall in what list comfort is presented as either an enemy or an obstacle? Comfort.
Oh yeah, you posted this in the chat early on, and it didn't ring any bells for me. My immediate reaction was that it's our relationship to comfort that is a frequent, actually, obstacle. But the wonderful thing about this course, this series, is that I have all these other presenters, colleagues here with me, who can help out in this period, this discussion period. So I'm going to see if any of my other colleagues here have a helpful response to comfort and where does that appear in any other lists? Anyone? We have Agnes, Noel, Sarah, Mo. Anyone want to jump in? Julia, Richard. Comfort. Some sort of southern obstacle. Maybe a list of southern style. Paul Wegener. Do you have a response to comfort or a separate question?
No, I was going to say is that comfort is covered by the first lord of materialism.
Always seeking comfort.
Right. And also our, technological comfort is what's causing this harm. So our unwillingness to give up our tech comfort leads to a big problem.
And I recall Rinpoche, the Dorje Drodel, talking about the proclivity for comfort of all kinds in the Western world that he encountered. And he would make fun of us always having our tissues nearby and every little want and need pampering us constantly so that we're not experiencing the elemental quality of our world and shielding ourselves in that way with comfort. So let's see, who else do we have? Is the quality of the cocoon? Yes. My cocoon is very comfortable. That's true. What else? Comforting ideas. Yes, philosophical systems. The three lords of materialism. Yeah. Any other comments? Questions? Stories? Any good stories about experiencing doubt? We had some in our breakout group. Anyone want to share anything? I don't see any other hand raisings. So what happens now is I just pick on people and ask them to respond to the questions.
Demita had her hand up.
Oh, great. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you for that. It was awesome. And it's so good to be in the presence of this community. Can you talk a little bit about the relationship between doubt and, hopelessness?
I think the hopelessness occurs early on in the path, is along with fear is one of the two main obstacles that we encounter towards entering and engaging in the path at all, is a sense of hopelessness and not having any sense of the potential of basic goodness and wakefulness that exists within each of us. And that has a quality of doubt to it that the Dorje Drodel mentions. where he says early on there was this experience of doubt, but that this one is a fundamentally more profound and sort of existential doubt that's actually, I'm sorry, not profound and existential doubt. It's purely a sort of facade created by our ego as our ego begins to get eroded and exposed by the process of the path. The ego reacts and to our path of transcending ego by saying, wait a second, think again, buddy, and throws up all sorts of doubts. I think the hopelessness is earlier on. What do you think about that, please? And how do you pronounce your name properly?
Damita. No, just kidding. It's Demita. Um,
That's what confused me. Demita, thank you.
No, I actually thought that there was some correlation here, just in the sense of ego also, you know, I'm not sure if I want to get into a binary about hope or hopelessness, but I go in and out of that, you know, like I feel like these days, even though I feel like I'm trying to protect a view of, you know, like not lapsing into cocoon, and not lapsing into concepts and all that kind of stuff, just holding the view, I still feel like I can lose hope in our ability to create enlightened society.
It's really hard to maintain that hope, isn't it, these days? Oh my God. It's such a difficult, bizarre world. So, in what way does that hope become a trap for you? You know, so does that end up giving you sort of, do you end up using that as an excuse for not working on yourself and not going further with yourself?
Well, sometimes they say the trap of hope and doubt. Hope and doubt. Like
Yeah,
it's not just doubt, it's also hope.
right.
That's a trap.
Definitely.
So I try to put it in that category, but no, I don't give up on the work, you know, like it doesn't, whether we succeed or not, we still have to do it.
Yeah, yeah. So you found that certainty that keeps you going then. That's key. Well, I think we lost you.
No, I just don't want to take up too much space.
Uh, okay. I don't see you taking up any space, by the way. I can't find you on my screen, but maybe you also meant time.
Yeah, I meant time.
Let's see. We have all sorts of nice chats. The Ambush of Hope is coming up soon. We have a preview of a future session. One of the other dignities has the Ambush of Hope. That's cool. Don't look up. The movie shows in comedic style just how challenging it can be not to scream about the current situation. What else? Thank you, Demita. Anyone else?
Paul has his hand up.
Paul, please go ahead.
Hi, this is kind of two elements of this, I guess. One, in responding to Demita and asking about hope and fear, I was struck by your question about doubt being a trap. And it seems to me that as we get into the next dignity, an ambush seems to be even more threatening than a trap. So I kind of wanted to talk, I was wondering about that. An ambush being something that kind of comes and traps you, as opposed to being caught in a trap. But I don't know, maybe that's for the next conversation. But I wanted to ask you, as you talked about how these dignities are a progression, but also how they are ornaments. And I imagine that like ornaments on our basic goodness or on our fundamental nature. Does doubt relate to the progression part only, or is doubt always part of the ornament?
I guess I would say it can be both. But I think the aspect of doubt, once we learn how to relate to that, I don't think we forget how to relate to that. And I think the habitual pattern of it will continue to come up for a very long time. But I think the being trapped in it does not happen as much once we understand the nature of it, and once we have like genuine experiences of being trapped and getting out. I don't think we need to experience that over and over again. I think like 3 good ones are probably enough. And then I think the adornments quality is that, the fully accomplished warrior is not just inscrutable, but is also still meek and perky and outrageous as well. So, and displays the dignities in different situations, as did the Dorje Droddel. He was an incredible manifestation of all the dignities and the sort of quality of being able to manifest in different ways in different situations was remarkable.
I just wonder whether or not you ever get to the point where there isn't an opportunity for doubt, where you completely eliminate samsara, for example. Do we ever get to a point where we completely eliminate samsara? And do we completely eliminate doubt in our manifestation of these dignities?
Yeah, that's wonderful. Something interesting to wonder about, I guess. I think Julia has do you have a comment about this, Julia, or something else? Your hand is raised. And you're muted as well.
I was going back a little bit to some of this stuff all various questions, but one of the most interesting things about doubt, by the way, first of all, you've done a fantastic job. I couldn't commend you more. I loved your talk. And so have many other people, so thank you. But the interesting thing is that in our case, it's not doubt versus faith. There's nothing to believe in. It's about space. It's about having your conceptual mind blown up. And there's nothing better than all these horrible things, because every day we're having our kleshas ransacked. Every single day we're having our kleshas ransacked. So in some ways, it's like appreciating the fresh space that comes from being suddenly free from fixed mind and not have to cover it up. Don't cover it up. That to me is the essence of warriorship. And you do that only if you can raise lunta, and then it becomes soft. The sharpness becomes soft. And then you have no hope either, because how could we have any hope? But then you're free. If you don't have any hope, I mean, first you deal with fear and you become familiar with your mind, and every moment you deal with fear. And if you somehow or other lean into the wakeful side, what you're talking about is like the one of the narrow gorges in our path to wakefulness, and we could get ambushed in there. Or we can go to another one and you get ambushed by hope, or you get ambushed by this and that. But like each ambush only destroys your ego if you're lucky. And then you can actually raise long term, become ever more warrior-like.
That's great.
Cool.
That is great. The way that the experiencing of the obstacles, it actually is the way to progress on the path.
It's chud. It's like a chud practice.
Yeah.
Let's like
Cut
slash
off another
throat.
limb.
Yeah, cut the throat of our hope.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
it's complete and thorough because it's not based on having some belief in something or other. That's you just said that. I just wanted to repeat that. That was I found that really helpful.
Let's fly like the Garuda.
And it reminds me of a phrase that I think's in the Sadhana Mahamudra, where he says, even if all the Buddhas of the 3 times in the 10 directions were to appear in front of you, you would not be dissuaded.
It's like secular crazy wisdom is what we're doing. Some kind of like crazy wisdom that has nice, claws with like painted, and they don't look bad. They're nicely manicured, but it's like it's some really intense stuff that the Vimoksha and the stroke practice. It's like a crazy wisdom talisman that cuts through all this shit. So thank you.
That's interesting. You mentioned the stroke. It seemed to me, I was reading the different, looking at the different texts, and in the stroke practice, without describing it in too much detail, after the initial phases of the stroke, there's then this pause. And that's where the doubt can occur. And then we cut through that and we press harder and harder and firmer and more firm. So that's sharpness of Perky and the discipline of just continuing to press firmly and sharply, not giving in to the doubt, recognizing, acknowledging, accepting, and owning the doubt, but seeing it as doubt. Doubting the doubt was from Julia. That was brilliant. Thank you so much for that. What else? We have all sorts of cool little things posted in the chat. Your throat is so cuttable. It's a cute one. Good and bad, happy, refraining, accepting, and not confused in one's mind. How is this related to the question of doubt and hopelessness? In these times, one understands the game of ego, and so we become completely clear about what to accept and what to reject, which is the Great Eastern Sun, the Great Eastern Sun, showing the way of discipline. Its rays show the way of discipline. The way of proceeding further is by illuminating what to accept and what to reject. Andrew Forbes, greetings.
Thank you. What came to mind is a moment of doubt. I'm actually doing the stroke practice as we meet here. I was a little late, but it seems to me that a lot of doubt could be doubt in gentleness. And that moment of relaxing the grip on the brush could be a moment of aggression, of wanting to press harder and harder with aggression. Whereas doubt, or in this case, to cut through doubt, is to become more gentle and more gentle and softer and softer and softer.
That's so cool. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, he actually, or the text actually describes how aggression could arise at that point in the way that one relates to the experience that comes up in that pause, in that relaxation of the grip at that point in executing the stroke, and that one has to cut through the aggression. So how and shift one's attention to the gentleness and the wholesomeness of basic goodness. So how does one do that, Andrew? How do you not get caught in the aggression, but cut the aggression as you're pressing down further?
Well, there's this really beautiful moment when you're holding your brush and you can feel the ink coming from the bristles and actually getting on the paper. You can have the sensation of all the bristles and the communication that you're making with the paper. And in that communication, I'm not sure if, okay, of being present with the brush, of actually being present doing the practice, that activity brings us further into gentleness because of the heightened receptivity of not just our minds, but the way that we're communicating with the world at that moment.
Yeah, shifting our attention to appreciating
that
qualities of the brush and the ink and the paper.
Like touching
and also remembering the mother and the father lineages.
I'm living at Sky Lake right now, and there's a lot of there's a lot of Ikebana that I've been doing. So one thing I've just noticed in working with natural materials, working with flowers and nature, is in order to actually make an arrangement, you have to be so gentle with the materials, with the natural materials, otherwise they break. So when I'm touching a flower petal, or I'm touching a stem, or a bush, or something like that, I have to actually grip the materials from its point of view. There's a reflection, almost similar to mudra, in that I'm actually projecting my mind into the flower so that it is actually perceiving me touching it. And that way I can have a sense of actually working with it and making contact with it without damaging it. I find it very similar to doing a stroke.
You're muted, Derek.
Thank you. I was trying to improve his sound by muting myself. But yeah, thank you for that. That's cool, that way of relating. And also in the chat, just to read a couple of very helpful chats relating to this topic, is someone says, let's see, Susie Almgren, no matter the apparent hopelessness of the situation, relaxing attachment to results that often go along with hope, which is another way of never giving up no matter what. The good old path is the fruition. So I found that one helpful. And then from Sarah Coleman, a co-presenter, cutting aggression is always accomplished by feeling, shifting to feeling, and then letting go. Thank you for those. And so hand raised by Ginny Evans, please go ahead.
In your questions, I really enjoy contemplating in what sense is doubt a trap? Because when we may experience doubt and then kind of step into it, believe in it, and the trap closes at that point, because then the doubt starts to become reasonable, practical, righteous, even, and you're caught.
Totally. I love that image you use. I was like playfully thinking of like showing different types of traps today on the screen. But what you're describing is how doubt becomes a trap, because we sort of know it, we see it, and we walk into it, we step in it, and then it closes on us.
And then we believe it, and it starts to have its own life.
Yeah, we believe it, and then it closes on us. It takes over. Yeah. So another question I asked was like, when you recollect or generate doubt, do you find that you've learned a way of not getting caught, and what that reference point is? Is it a certainty in your practice? Is it a certainty in a particular teacher, or an idea, or a feeling? And clearly I was asking that question as a way of suggesting that we become aware of how we have learned to not get caught in doubt, even though we all, I think, or at least myself, still do get caught in doubt. We've also, I think, learned how not to. And I think if we can become aware of what we do have certainty in, we're more able to go there when we recognize our doubt. So let's see, there was also a question in the chat by Crane Stucky. Crane, are you here? You want to repeat your question to all of us?
Hi, I am here.
Hi.
My voice is here. So it's about synchronizing mind and body, which is the sixth one that's supposed to sum up the other five. And I've always had trouble understanding what synchronizing mind and body even actually means. And I'm not sure I see how it is the one that sums up the others. So I was hoping you might say a little more about that.
Cool. Neat. That's a great question and a great idea of like, what is the role of synchronizing mind and body, and how does it in some way represent the essence of all the different aspects, or does it? And I'd love to hear other people's opinions on this. And but for me, it reminded me of the way the Dorje Drado constantly brought us back to good head and shoulders and posture as the embodiment of synchronized mind and body. And I know you led a Danton recently, and I'm sure you used that description and how you presented the practice. And I wonder if you could think about that and say, in what way did that sort of summarize the practice of meditation?
Well, the way that I do feel as if I understand what synchronizing mind and body is about is that it's a way of describing when mind and body are in the same place at the same time doing the same thing. That it's kind of it's that sort of almost functional level of not having my body being one place and my mind being doing something else. So that's the core of the practice, and the core of, I guess it's an aspect of good head and shoulders. If I'm noticing that I have good head and shoulders, then I'm there with my body. Or if I'm noticing that I don't have it, I'm there with my body. But it always has felt to me as if it's about something more than that. But I'm not sure I know what that is. And I don't think I've seen a lot expressed about what that is, about a sort of a larger definition of what synchronizing mind and body involves.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I share your intimation. And just briefly, I'm going to say that I wonder if mind and body is a way of summing up some other aspects of our being. Does body refer to something larger? Does mind refer to something larger? That's summed up in there. And I see a couple of hands raised. Are either of those hands raised in reference to this comment? Bob Vogler, please.
Hi, thanks. Whoops. We're in the same. I'm gonna have to not talk. All right, it won't work.
Bob and I are sitting right next to each other, so he has a way of
Maybe I'll
muting.
talk here.
Oh, here, he's coming to this screen.
So I was just gonna say, sorry about the problem here, that Dorje Drattle said something in this talk that gave me a new understanding about mind and body being synchronized. So I always thought it was something more, yogic or something like Tai Chi. But what he said was it's just doing what you say and saying what you do, quite simply. And that, for example, you wear good clothes to express basic goodness. And that, so by, in other words, fully manifesting your understanding, and that would be becoming perky.
That's great. Thank you. Anyone else have a thought about this? Synchronization of mind and body. He says that is to say, your perception of your world, i.e. sense perception or view, and your behavior, emotions, activity towards your world are usually synchronized according to the Great Eastern Sun vision. You do what you say, you practice what you preach, and you behave according to the way you feel. And that is why the world of Great Eastern Sun is called a genuine world. So you're genuine. And sort of acknowledging all the aspects of your makeup. Xinjiang, fully processed, is another way that he has described synchronized mind and body, or actually he's used the term synchronized mind and body as a translation of this Tibetan term Xinjiang, which means thoroughly trained or thoroughly processed, 100% genuine. So in my mind, it sort of summed up the whole thing, where you're completely in tune with what's going on in your mind and your emotions and your physical being. And you're not repressing, you're not suppressing, you're not exaggerating, you're not indulging, but you're recognizing and relating in a genuine way with everything that's going on in your being. And thereby you're able to harness all those different aspects towards experiencing your world openly and going beyond hesitation and so forth. Sarah Coleman, please.
Just quickie, for me, body and mind synchronization is it's so simple. Yeah, it's a very simple understanding that when we're in the cocoon, our body and mind are not synchronized because we're running around in some fantasized space, right? So synchronizing body and mind is being present here and now, which is a groundless space full of luminous emotions and all our feelings, right? It's that I wanted to say that because so many elegant teachings. It's been, the teachers have elaborated things so much for all of us with our complicated minds, but all we're talking about here is so simple, and is a plea. Please think about it. Don't be afraid of the simplicity. It's just as simple as, that's the sharpness of Perky is cutting through the cocoon, letting the world cut you. Ah! And it's doing it all the time. But it's not running away from that sharpness when you start realizing it's really cutting me. So that's it. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. Let's see, quickly clarify. Yes, timing.
It's Shari here. Could I just, well, yes, it will be time in a few minutes, but could I also just read out Noel McClellan's comment here?
Excellent. Thank you.
About this. He says, maybe body equals sense, mind equals awareness, senses plus awake equals great eastern sun.
That's great. Thank you. It's neat seeing all the different chats at the same time. It's a lot going on. It's fun. Let's see. Sherab's hand has been up for a while. I haven't seen that. I'm sorry. Sherab Anukian.
We have just really a minute or two, Derek, if that's okay.
Sure.
Thank you. I'm trying to be brief. This addresses, Derek, something you mentioned a bit earlier. You tossed out how come we keep being caught, and as a result of our practice, we get out of the trap, but then we get caught again, and we get caught again. And how do we go from being caught to being free? For me, experientially, has to do with the level of distress, of total, horrific, whatever, depending on the situation, that happens when I'm caught. And that sort of triggers my memory of all kinds of practices and my guru and my own, and I get out. But as I get older and older, it's knocking louder and louder on my door, which is really funny, don't you think?
Funny? I don't know about funny.
Sarah, I'm looking at Sarah the screen. She caught what my meaning. Well, if it's too horrific, if you don't laugh, Derek, I'm telling you.
You're still young.
That's my minute is over.
Yeah, well, sense of humor is key.
I wanted you to know that. Just
sense of humor is key, and yeah, I'm sure we all are experiencing how, as we age, our habitual patterns get more and more difficult to overcome. And I think thinking about what we're doing, reflecting on what we do, is very helpful, as opposed to just thinking that we're going to naturally change, but actually thinking about how we reacted yesterday or earlier or last week is very helpful to reflect upon.
Yeah, indeed.
And let's see, one thing somebody said, becoming aware of what we're certain of. I feel like we know things in our body and we don't acknowledge them in our mind. So that's what I meant by becoming aware of what we're certain of. And I think that's it. I think we need to close.
Thank you so much, Derek. Did we give you enough opportunity for any final remarks that you wanted to make? You did kind of just sum things up, but is there anything you would like to say further?
No, just that I really appreciate this opportunity to do all of this, study these amazing teachings again and experience them all with you. Thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you, Derek. And thank you, warriors. I don't think I can really say it any better than the Dorje Droddle did. There were two little sentences after a gap, at the end of his talk. And he said, "You've all been great students. You've been great fun." And that's how he ended. So Derek, perhaps it's my imagination, but when you said, when you said doubt the doubt, I had this feeling that the whole group of participants became one community. That we had, that a light bulb went off, and it was very powerful, and I really appreciate it. I loved your presentation as well, and I thank you heartily for that. So
Thank you for mentioning that, because I received that pointing out instruction from my fellow colleague Julia Sahabian in preparing for this talk. It was really helpful. Doubt the doubt. It was like,
Yeah, she's sharp. So our next session is going to be on January 16th. So in 1 week, that's session 8. And Noel McClelland will be commenting on the Vidyadhara's talk on Perky, which I think we've had a good segue into. These are the audio recordings. They're found in August 1978. So you probably got a little email in there too about a celebration. And we, the staff and faculty hope that you will enjoy a celebration to complete this series. So that's an additional session that will be held on March 6th, a little later than usual, so that we don't interfere with one of the Shambhala Day offerings that day. That's a Sunday. So save the date, stay posted, and I'll turn it over to Leonard to close our session properly.
By this merit may all obtain omniscience, may defeat the enemy wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara may free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the Rigton's wisdom bloom, may the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled, may all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory. Thank you all. Stay safe and well, cheerful, and enjoy each other's company for another 10-15 minutes if you like on this window, and see you next week.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Derek.